Welcome back to the Start and Scale podcast. I'm your host, Jack Brandwood, and in this series, we're diving headfirst into the world of tech with the people who are coding the future from the front lines. This is the place where we refactor the way you think about scaling tech teams, debugging their journeys, reviewing their stories, and pushing boundaries to ship better insights. Whether you're a seasoned techie who's seen your fair share of legacy code, an aspiring professional ready to deploy your skills, or just fascinated by the world of technology, this episode will give you unique insights and practical takeaways to add to your backlog.
This is probably my biggest message I can give you. I think we're heading for a disaster with AI. A disaster far bigger than anything we've seen before.
So grab your headphones, commit to this listen, and let's sprint into another episode. I hope you enjoy the conversation.
Leigh, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
I'm a little bit nervous now because we've just, literally before we press play, you've told me that you're like media trained.
Yeah, it was many years ago, so I don't worry, it won't be, it's nothing major.
Oh, good. Well, look, thank you for coming on. And I always like to start these things with a bit of a deep question. Who is Leigh Rathbone?
Wow, Leigh Rathbone is a dad, he's a husband, he's an Aston Villa fan, he drinks craft ale, he loves football, he loves exercise, he loves life. Been in tech about 27 years now. I keep saying 20 years, and I've been saying that for sort of 7 years now. And I looked at the calendar, I was like, no, it's 27 years. So 27 years in tech, working across 14 different companies. And that's not been all in the same sectors. That's been almost a different sector each time. So some people stay, say, in gaming or finance or retail. I've moved constantly around different sort of industries, so I haven't stayed in a specific industry. I've stayed in a craft, which is tech, but I've worked across many different industries.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I can't wait to dive into that because that's a different approach to what most people take in their career, right? They usually get stuck in a niche, but they get stuck into a niche.
Yes.
And then that's it. But okay, cool. Well, look, I did kind of warn you just before that I was going to ask you to draw something. And Tact, our vision is to create a world where everyone gets their dream job.
Okay.
And you weren't always where you are now. Could you draw me what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Right. And do you want me to draw it and then show you, and you've got to guess what it is?
Well, yeah, you can draw it and then run us, as you're drawing it, run us through why and what happened.
Oh my God. I'm afraid it's going to be matchstick people. Okay. I won't say matchstick men, but I'll say matchstick people. So it's very, very simple. And I had this dream from, a very young age and right through till sort of my 20s, really. But it was a fake dream because I think realistically you start to understand as you hit your 20s what you're going to become, what you're not going to become. So mine was very, very simple. It was basically that.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So I know for those at home, I know it's not a very good picture, but this is meant to be a goalmouth. This is meant to be a footballer. That's obviously a football, and I'm shooting it towards the goal because when I was about 7 or 8, my club, Aston Villa, they won the league for the first time in many, many years in 1980-81. And it just ignited this passion, this love for football. And that continued right through to the present day. I live up in Liverpool now, so I've moved out of Birmingham. But my son and me, season ticket holders at Aston Villa, so we still do that horrible journey up and down the M6 to go and watch our beloved Aston Villa. So that was my dream, and as I say, I continued, rightly or wrongly, trying to have this as my dream right up until I was 21. I was thinking, yeah, I can still do it, and it never happened. But hey, we all have dreams, and it's all really important to have that dream and chase it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Give you a North Star.
Yeah.
It's, when did you move away from football to your career path now?
So I left university at the age of 21, and many people on the call probably weren't born at this point, but in 1993 there was a huge recession, much deeper than the one we're currently seeing. So I left uni, promised all these graduate jobs, nothing happened. So I went to work at something called, try and keep a straight face, a greyhound track, of which one is still here in Manchester. But the one I worked at was in Birmingham. And I went to sweep the cellar floors for £2 an hour because that was the only work going. But by the time I left 4 years later, I was operations manager in charge of the security, the gambling, We had an underground bank that I was in charge of. That's where the media training came from, because sometimes I'd go on local TV. I got trained by the Bank of England in how to spot fake counterfeit notes by just closing my eyes and feeling them. It was a very, very bizarre 4 years of my life, but gave me some great life lessons, absolutely amazing life lessons in leadership. My first sort of encounter with tech, because all the gambling was tech driven. So I had my first sort of experience of software testing, even though I didn't know that was an industry or a craft at that point. And around about 1998, I fell into software testing, and I've never looked back. That is a craft. This industry has given me so much, Jack. It's given me stability. It's given me direction in my life. I was a bit of a loose cannon before I fell into technology. I think when you live or work in a world where there's gambling, alcohol, and the public, you're going to deal with power, corruption and lies. And that time at the Greyhound track was very volatile. I won't go into what that means, but there was a lot going on. Greyhound racing, I'm going to say it, is corrupt to the core. And when you get corruptness, you're going to get money and all kinds of stuff going on. But I left all that behind. And since I've fallen into tech, I feel my life has changed completely. It's given me direction, stability. It's given me the house I've got. I'm not very materialistic, but I am lucky to have a job that pays for a roof over my head and pays for a car and clothes. And it's given me my kids, my marriage. So everything since I've fallen into tech, my whole life, I feel, has just been so positive. Wow. And I know that was a really long-winded answer.
No, I love that, yeah. And I think just a gratitude for the career you found. A lot of people, a lot of people don't stop and think about that. I mean, I think you clearly love what you do. I love what I do. And sometimes you have to stop and think, there's people out there that get up on a Monday and they go, oh my God, I hate this job.
Exactly.
Oh, and what an awful place to be in.
Yeah.
But you have no choice, right? And then so to have that gratitude and to reflect on that, I think is really, really important.
I also think the world of tech, especially in the last 5 years, has changed so much as the entry points for people to get into tech has changed. So you're getting more and more people now coming into tech that have probably had a previous job. Whereas in the old days, you had to go through college, university, and then go into tech. And it was mostly people from the gaming sort of teenage stuff that ended up in tech. But now, there's so many different entry points for people to get into tech. I think people like me who had a career before I got into tech, we're probably now more the critical mass than the people that leave college and go, hey, I'll have a career in tech. I think there's more people like me now entering tech that don't have that tech background than those that have gone through the university route.
That's so interesting, yeah. And you know what? I think I know some people who were a career changer. And I think when I spoke to them, they were kind of like, I didn't understand the things that I were doing before that would translate into technology.
Exactly.
And there were things like, I think the person I was speaking to, I think they worked in McDonald's, right? But they just got this. They understood process and continuous improvement and all this sort of stuff. Do you think, how does that relate to tech? But it really does.
Oh, that McDonald's is Six Sigma, so they make six mistakes every million transactions.
Wow.
So if you want to know about processes and you're looking for part-time work, and if you're at college, go to McDonald's, as you said, and observe. Get close to the manager, the shift manager, and just learn about the processes, because they are one of the best in the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's wild. Well, look, you've been in this industry for, like you said, 27 years now.
Yeah.
What's next? What's coming?
For me or for the industry as a whole?
For the industry as a whole.
Right, okay. Yeah. I think there are many different layers to this. We all know AI has sort of burst onto the scene from November 2022 when ChatGPT launched. And the whole world seems to have changed overnight for me. And I've never really experienced that in tech before, when something launches and has such a big impact. And I'll give you some examples if I can, Jack. I was lucky enough to work on the world's first touchscreen smartphone in 2002, 2003. But that didn't become critical mass until 2012. Everything seemed to take 10 years back in the day to become mainstream. I worked on the world's first smartwatch in 2005. And you could probably say 10 years later, smartwatches became a thing. I worked on the foundations of streaming in 2007, and we could probably say you move forward probably 5 years and streaming became a key thing, a key part of tech. But with Gen AI, I wouldn't say it's come out of nowhere because it's been in the making for years, but my God, I'll give you an example. My brother-in-law, not tech savvy, has used Gen AI to create his coursework for a full year as a teacher, and he's used Gen AI to create his full year's worth of coursework. Now, when someone who knows nothing about tech can use a piece of tech, it's going to become mainstream. The other example is Alexa. When Alexa came out, and I think it was 2016 in the UK, I bought it. I was one of the first to buy it off Amazon because I thought, this is interesting. We had it in our house, and I remember putting the key in the door one day, opened it, and I heard my daughter in the back room saying, Alexa, explain to a 7-year-old what a verb is. And I was like, oh my word, this is going to become something. And then later that week, I went up to my mother-in-law, who's completely blind. She had an Alexa, and she was dancing to swing music and talking to Alexa. Now, you've got two extremes there, a 7-year-old and an 80-year-old, a blind 80-year-old, both using Alexa. You know it's going to become mainstream. But Gen AI, it's there already, and it's done it in a record amount of time. So that we all know Gen AI is going to be the thing, but there's loads of things that come off that we've spoken about that I think you want me to bring to life.
Yeah, absolutely. But I love that, what you were saying there, that if tech is available to be used by the public, it will become mainstream. I didn't even think about that as a concept. Yeah. It's like it's being democratized for everyone to use.
Well, look at the acting industry. Right, actors no longer have to go to Hollywood. They're on YouTube, they're on Instagram, they're on Snapchat, they're on TikTok. They're in their bedrooms. They're using AI to generate content. The actors now are those people. They're not the actors that go to Hollywood to get into films. The people that are earning loads of money now are the YouTubers. So they're probably earning more than probably 80% of actors that dream of going to Hollywood to be in films or TV series. And you're right, the whole acting industry has been democratized. Anybody can do it now. You can be an actor. You can get a phone, one of these smartphones that I worked on in 2002 that are now mainstream, and you can put it on a tripod and you can be an actor today. It's unbelievable.
And surely that is the best thing for any industry, because then you're not only relying on the people who have the opportunity to go to Hollywood, for example, who have the money that they can go to Hollywood. It's the people, it's anybody and everybody.
Yeah.
So you're getting the best of everybody.
Yeah.
It breaks all down all the barriers. Wow.
Oh, the barriers are coming right down. And all those streaming platforms I've mentioned, coupled with AI, I think the word I would use is opportunities.
Yeah.
It's creating so many opportunities. And I think what we're going to see in the next 5 years is a boom of promotions at work. And those promotions will be people that are seizing the Gen AI opportunities. I think we're going to see a boom in startup companies, one-people companies starting up using Gen AI to create a product that they can then sell. And it almost feels like we've been through this before. And it was the gaming community that became the startups. Back in the 80s, they would be gaming, programming in their bedrooms, and then those people now are our CTOs. And I think we're going to see it again. I think we're going to see this explosion of people starting companies, and if we move forward 10, 15, 20 years, they'll probably be our CEOs and CTOs. It's happening again. Everything happens in cycles.
Yeah, because I had a fellow called Sean Brown on the podcast a while back, but he was the most recent one that got released, and he's fantastic. I mean, he just loves building things, and he was showing me this app that he'd built like in 15 minutes on the train using AI. Yeah. That could read his kids' bedtime stories if he wanted, right? And all these different ideas that he just built with the help of Gen AI. And he said to me, look, as someone can have such a foundational level of knowledge of tech and build a website and build a program, build a piece of software with the use of this. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens to the startup world, because everyone now, startups have become democratized, right? Because historically, people might have fantastic ideas but wouldn't know a thing about technology, but now they don't need to. which is so exciting. Yeah.
It's removing barriers. I'll give you a great example. Someone called Lee Harding, who I've worked with previously. He's a head of talent acquisition.
Yeah, I know Lee, yes.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. Well, have you seen his TikTok?
Yeah, brilliant.
Right, so he has built a Gen AI app where you can feed your CV through it and it will give you feedback on the layout, some keywords, and he's used Gen AI to do it.
Wow.
And it's out there for free. You don't have to pay him anything. He's just created it, put it out. What a great piece of marketing for his personal brand.
Yeah.
So there's someone who is actually a head of talent acquisition doing a great job in his daytime. Then out of his daytime role, he's found a passion, which is Gen AI, TikTok, creating content to help others. Yes, we all know TikTok, you can earn a bit of money, but I don't think he's doing it for that. He's doing it for personal brand, I think, and to help people, which is a great combination. If you can combine those two, then you've got a lovely raison d'etre for life, haven't you? So, there's a great example of someone who, I don't think Lee writes code, but he's generated loads of content on TikTok. He's got over 500,000 followers now.
Wow.
He's had over, I think, 30 million views on his TikToks. And this tool, I'd love to get to have a chat with him again to see how many people have pumped their CV through his app that he generated using Gen AI. And he did this, I think, 18 months ago. So it's not something he's done recently. He saw the opportunity the moment ChatGPT launched.
Oh my God.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, that is crazy. Wow. Oh, I'm going to hit him up after this.
Having a chat with him is great, Lee.
Yeah. I've followed him on LinkedIn for ages and seen all this stuff, but I've never reached out to him. But this gives me a reason to.
Yeah, he'll be over the moon that we've mentioned him in this, by the way. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, just on the to continue talking about AI, I guess. Weirdly enough, we've got a roundtable coming up soon to talk about AI within software engineering. How can AI be used in software engineering successfully, do you think?
Well, that is a really deep question. I think for me, I think we need to tread carefully. First of all, companies' intellectual property. We must always protect our intellectual property. So I think the most obvious thing that people are doing right now is they're going to ChatGPT, they're pumping some code into it and saying, tell me what's wrong. Okay, so we've all been there, haven't we? When we write a bit of code, we get writer's block. People that write music have it, writer's block. It's a common thing. Programmers get it. They're no different. Copy, paste into ChatGPT and you get some feedback. It's no different to going to Stack Overflow and saying, I've got this problem, and then the community pile on and give you the answers. ChatGPT does it in milliseconds. So I think that is probably the biggest use case at the moment out there. I think from a quality engineering perspective, I think QEs, QAs, testers, they're doing exactly the same. I think product owners are probably doing exactly the same to generate user stories. Why spend 4 hours a day writing user stories when ChatGPT can do it? That releases a product owner's time to spend time with the customer and the team. So I think people have cottoned on to the fact that we can use Gen AI to do some heavy lifting for us. We can check our work. We can generate code as well, but I need to come to that because I think that's where we need to tread really carefully and slow right down. I think people are using it to do mundane stuff. Like you would, like test automation is there to do mundane tasks. You automate it to get some early feedback. I think Gen AI, exactly the same. It's a tool. And I think with all tools like Google, automation tools, you need to tread carefully and take what you need from them. So from an engineering perspective, just to recap, I think people are checking for errors and checking their code, so validating. I think they're using it to generate code. I think testers are using it to write automation scripts, write test cases. I think POs, product owners, are using it to generate user stories and acceptance criteria. And I'd be amazed if delivery managers aren't using it in some way to help them plan a roadmap, generate images, etc. So I think at a top level, that's where I think it's predominantly being used. I think if we go a little bit deeper, I think some companies have got to the point where they've actually created AI solutions. So there's two things going on. There's the ChatGPTs, the LLMs that you can go to. So Claude, ChatGPT, where you can do what I've just said, type in something, get an answer. But then there's the other side where you actually build an AI solution, something that goes out to the public, that is heavily based on AI technology that solves problems for the public. And I'll give you one example. In an airport, Manchester Airport, they've created some kiosks next to the information desk. I saw it and I was a little bit curious. And I was like, oh, you go up to it. And I noticed that people were speaking French to this little kiosk. And they were getting someone, a little person inside, speaking back in French. And I was like, what's going on here? So I started looking around. So I went up to it and I went, oh, it can tell me where the toilets are. It can tell me where there's a tech shop. It can tell me where I can get a burger. So I said, tell me where I can get a burger. And it said, if you turn right and go down this part of the airport, you can see that this burger stall is there. And I was like, wow, that's brilliant. It's AI based, but it's next to the information desk. They've not got rid of the information desk. What this has done, using AI, is taken away mundane, very simple tasks that people can just speak to a machine, get an answer. And that's released the person on the information desk to help people with really more important issues. I've lost my child, I've lost my passport. That's really important stuff. So it's released the person to do more critical value-add tasks. So that's an AI solution that's out there. That's there in the airport right now. Manchester Airport are using it. Amazing.
Wow. Yeah. It's just, it's so, I guess, because I'm relatively young. I'm 30 now, but
that's young. That's young.
I know. But I feel like I haven't been physically aware of going through a period of time like this. You know what I mean? Like I don't feel like I've because I've been younger and I probably haven't been as in it as I have been now. I'm like very aware that I'm going through a period of time that's going to be in the history books that people are going to talk about. And I can say I was there at the time. And people listen back to this podcast, well, maybe, I don't think they would, but maybe 15, 20 years and go, God, they sound stupid. Yeah, obviously that's that's how it first started. I just think it's wild. But do you think there's value in the mundane nitty gritty tasks that we are trying to automate?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, someone asked me to write a document because there's sort of two worlds out there. The waterfall world, which was very much teams stayed in isolation and the code came down like a waterfall. We're not really in those days anymore, but somebody needed a waterfall type document from me the other day. I just went into ChatGPT, asked it to create this document. I took the outputs. I then put the Leigh Rathbone flavour on top, which was, I have certain sayings and I like things written in certain English. So I tweaked the outcome. I then got it reviewed and everyone, that'll do. That took me about 30 minutes. Whereas to write the document from scratch would have probably taken 6 hours. Because these are old-fashioned, big, meaty documents. Auditors love them. Finance and anything where there's lives at risk, those kind of industries like good meaty documents because it shows you've put some thought and process into it, whereas context is king or queen. If you're in retail, the context is different to clinical software as an example. So those sort of industries where lives are at risk, there seems to be more governance and they want more documentation. But retail can be a little bit more free in their documentation because no one dies through retail software going wrong, or I hope they don't. Right. So yes, the mundane tasks all day long, and just going back to a point you said, Jack, around living through history. 100% they will do documentaries on people like me and you. In 15 years' time, it'll be a Netflix documentary. We'll be dark silhouettes. They'll disguise our voices because we lived through COVID and the launch of AI, Gen AI. And I think for the first time in my life, and I'm 53, so I'm a lot older than you, having worked on the world's first smartphone, and world's first smartwatch and streaming, I didn't know I was living through history. I didn't know I was working on what would become cutting-edge technology that would become mainstream. I was just doing a job. But for the first time in my life, those two events, I'm sat here and I'm going, I'm actually living through history for the first time. I know I am. And I know I'll be interviewed by Netflix in 15 years because this is a proper moment in time. So backing up what you said there, 100%.
Yeah, and I guess that's nice to know, isn't it, for yourself? But also, is there anything you can do as an individual to really take advantage of this opportunity?
Yes, 100%. Get on the front foot. Because a couple of minutes ago I mentioned there would be an explosion of promotions. I genuinely feel in 12 months, 18 months' time, there will be an explosion of promotions, and it will be those people that have seized the opportunity. I keep using that word, opportunity. So for me, my QEs, my testers at Cavu, they've all completed a simple course on prompt engineering. In other words, how do you prompt ChatGPT to give you what you want properly? That for me is, you go on LinkedIn, you'll know this, you can go on LinkedIn, those are roles out there that have been advertised, prompt engineers.
Yeah.
So learn. Do as many courses as you can. If there's a subject matter expert in your company, suckle up to them. And I'll give you an example. In 1998, when I entered testing for the first time, what I knew about computers, you could write on the tip of your pen. I knew basically nothing about computers. But I did clock that there were subject matter experts in the company, and they had knowledge I needed.
Right.
So I started partnering with them, buying them a few beers when we went out, because that was the culture then, not necessarily the culture these days, but back then, bought them beers, bought them lunch. Next thing you know, I'm putting up a chair next to them, I'm sapping everything from their brains because I can see the opportunity. I repeated that strategy in almost every company I've gone to. And I would encourage people, if there is somebody with key knowledge on AI in your company, get to know them, pair with them, ask them to come into your team to do a talk, just get anything you can from them. And then look at all the courses out there. There's LinkedIn courses, there's Pluralsight, they're all doing these courses. Just get into ChatGPT as well, or anything, and start playing, be brave. You can't break it. You can't break anything. And just start exploring. If you type something, what are you getting out? Generating pictures as an example. I spent a whole Saturday just on Gen AI, different LLMs, generating different images. And guess what? You're going to love this one. Yesterday, I was having a bit of banter with my football mates, and I went into ChatGPT and I said, create an image of Birmingham City's trophy cabinet empty with spider webs on it. Right, and it went, okay, and it came right, and there was trophies in it. And I said, no, I want 0 trophies in that cabinet. And it generated a different image, and there was 9 trophies in the cabinet. And I was like, it just can't cope. And this is a valuable lesson. You can't take everything from a Gen AI, all the outputs, and just treat it verbatim as correct, because it's not. There's many times where, and there's many examples out there where people have asked Gen AI some basic questions and it just can't cope. So tread with caution.
Yeah. So what do you do in those scenarios, right? Because for example, I was doing some research for something we're doing internally, and I asked it quite a few questions, and I thought, oh, this sounds great. And then I dug a little bit deeper, just myself on Google, and then it was incorrect. So what would you say to someone who's perhaps doing something like that? What would you say?
I think there's nothing better than pairing with other people. So if you're stuck, you should reach out to your team and say, I'm trying to generate something in Gen AI or in an AI agent, and it's just not working. Is there anybody to jump on with me? Because I think pairing is sharing and sharing is caring. And you can have that saying on a t-shirt for free. But I think there's nothing better than pairing with somebody if you're stuck. And I'll give you the example. When Alexa launched in 2016, I remember in 2018, I wanted to understand how to build an Alexa skill myself. Because if I'm a software tester, I want to know how to build something, so then I know how to test it. So I started building my first Alexa skill and got stuck, right, well and truly stuck. So I put the call out, I need help, anybody want to pair with me? And this was in my lunch times. So me and another person, we started pairing, and we got past the obstacle I needed to get past, but we both got stuck. So then we went to something called mobbing. If you don't know what mobbing is, it's probably the wrong word now. I think we're trying to use a word called ensemble. Mobbing has I think in Swedish, I think it means bullying. So we're trying to drop that word mobbing from tech and adapt ensemble. Basically what it means is you get together as a group and you swarm around a problem. Now you imagine 6 people looking at a problem instead of 1. You're going to solve that problem a lot quicker. So if you're stuck with your prompt engineering, reach out to somebody, because it could be an obvious error that you're putting in your prompts in the first place. Wow. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You know what? I've been because I have heard of Ensemble before, and I didn't really know what it was. Probably not. I just heard it kind of thrown around. That's why I love doing these podcasts, because I always learn so much. But the thing I love about tech is it's so practical. And obviously, like, if you've got a problem, get a load of people on it, and you'll all figure it out. It's just, I just love that, I guess, about the industry. But
we've gone through trends in tech. So if I think about extreme programming that came out, I think late 80s, early 90s, it was one of the first agile methodologies before we put it under the umbrella of agile. Extreme programming, pair programming, mobbing, these are not new terms. These have been around since the 1990s. But I think what happened somewhere along the way, we lost our way. And if I think about schools, if you go to junior or infant school, the teacher will predominantly say, turn to the person next to you and talk about this. So in school, they teach pairing and they teach ensemble, because they'll say, right, now get together in a group. When we go to secondary school, bang, it's like there's a reset button, and the secondary schools go, no, what are you doing talking to that person? I want silence. Right, so they've knocked the pairing and the ensemble and the creativity out of kids. Now, this is controversial, and I think that's bled into the workplace in the 80s and 90s, 2000s. And so all this pairing and ensemble, I feel, fell off a cliff. But then, round about 15 years ago, people started to go, no, actually, let's give this pairing and ensemble, let's give it another go. And now, I'll give you, in the building next door is a company called Cinch, where I worked. Yeah. And their default is we start with pairing. And if the pair gets stuck, we go to ensemble. And if then somebody wants to break out and work by themselves, that's super cool, you can do that. But the default is everyone pairs on every single ticket.
Wow.
I know. And I'm not saying that's right for everyone.
No.
But their culture, and with the tech stack they had, it suits them. It doesn't work in every company, that, by the way. But I did love that, experiencing that culture where we'd get a story and two devs would just say, right, let's jump on a call and we'll just start coding. And I was like, oh, this is fantastic. Oh, yeah, it's great. Sorry, I've rambled on a lot there.
No, it was great.
Yeah.
No, it was great. Well, another thing I wanted to touch on was these promotions that you talked about, that people are going to get promotions. And could you talk more about that?
Yeah. So I think those people that do take on the learnings and the opportunities, I think you could see those people almost jump ahead of people who are next in line. Because I always think you need to stay relevant. You need to stay on the front foot with your self-development. The word self-development, the clue is in the word self. Cavu does not own my self-development. I own my self-development. Cavu can put a structure in place to support me and give encouragement, but I own my self-development. That's final. I can't see anybody who could argue with that statement. So at Cavu, my job as a leader is to give support to everybody with self-development, but I can't force people to go to the watering hole. I think those people that will jump ahead will be those that have gone, right, I'm going to learn. I'm going to practice. I'm going to go to meetups. I'm going to go to conferences. I'm going to get involved in communities, AI communities. And I think we'll just see people naturally jump ahead in promotions of people that have become a little bit complacent, feel a little bit overwhelmed, probably haven't seized the opportunities. And I think they'll just go ahead and be promoted.
Wow. And do you think that, because I know you mentioned certain titles you think that might come into play with those promotions, which is quite interesting.
So there's a couple I have written a few down so I don't forget, but I think I've mentioned one of them. The prompt engineering, I think, is a role out there. And if I think back to where Agile became the critical mass, we had roles there that were Agile specific. So your Agile coaches, your Scrum Masters, to get the knowledge out there. And I think the same is going to happen with AI. I think we'll see new roles formed, but I think over time they'll probably filter out and fizzle out as AI becomes the norm and it becomes safer. But just a couple of roles that I have written down. The AI ethicist, so ethics. The person that is there to say that goes against our company ethics or that goes against human ethics, and those kind of people stop disasters. Right, so I think that one role, I don't even think that's actually out there yet. But I do think the AI ethicist is definitely going to be a role that keeps us safe. I think the obvious ones are going to be the chief AI officer, which is a bit of a mouthful.
Yeah.
we have chief people officer, we have chief finance officer, we have CTO. I do think we are going to see people appear as chief AI officers.
I met with someone yesterday about that.
No way, really?
Yeah. Let me just double check that.
Oh, lovely.
I'm sure that, and I just want to make sure that I've got it on airplane mode. But yeah, that's wild. I honestly, Sarah from Zally. She's
right.
Chief AI officer. Yeah.
There you go. So, I mean, they are a heavily AI-driven company and have been since they formed. That's their whole ethos. So I'm not amazed to hear that they are one of the first. But, let's go to the Very Group as an example. They're in retail. I'd be amazed if they haven't got a chief AI officer in the pipeline. Yeah. I really would. Other roles are, head of AI, I think is an obvious one, which sounds similar to the chief AI officer. But then I've got some radical ones that are in my head. So bear with me on this one. I'll take you on a journey. Okay. So in 2016, 9 years ago, I go to the BBC over in Media City to speak to their testing community. And I had one specific slide that I crafted the night before. And it was basically, do you remember the prick sticks glue?
Yeah.
It was basically a picture of one of those. And I said, I believe testers, QEs, we do something called glue work. And the room was silent. Everyone's going, this Leigh Rathbone's off his head. And I said, right, bear with me. I said, I think testers do stuff for a team that isn't in any job description. It's never written down. It's never asked. We just see some gaps and we fill them to get the team over the line. So it's a bit like having a glass, putting stones in it. The water that you pour into that glass, then the water goes in between the stones. I said, that's basically what I think the value for QEs is in the future. It's this, filling the gaps, spotting the gaps, filling them. Now let's move to AI. I genuinely think there will be a role for someone that is that gap spotter for AI. And I can't think of a title for it, but it's the glue work. It's the work that's never stated, never written down, in no job description, but people know without this person, things will fall down. So I wish I could create a nicer title for it, but I think there's that. And then there's a couple of others. I'm a great believer, when you have new technology, you need fire starters, twisted fire starters. And I think, again, the job title needs changing, but I think there will be a need for AI fire starters. Someone that goes into a company, gets energy behind AI, gets people excited, gets people passionate, links people up to learning materials to get them the oomph that we're going to need in people. And I call that the fire starter role for AI. But we all know, everywhere you have fire starters, you need fire people to put those fires out. Because fire starters, they can be so enthusiastic and passionate, they can take their eye off safety or security. They just go, idea. So you're going to need someone that just keeps them in check. So when a fireman or firewoman turns up and they put the fires out, I think there's that kind of role in AI needed to keep us safe. And I'll probably wrap up with this one, because this is probably my biggest message I can give you on this podcast. I think we're heading for a disaster with AI. And I'm talking about a disaster far bigger than anything we've seen before. And I think the reason, or what causes this disaster, is people won't think about these roles. They'll just rush ahead. They'll go, AI makes us quicker. We can get code live quicker. We might not need QEs. We might not need devs because, hey, Gen AI does it all for us. And I think, anytime there's new technology, there's people that want to get ahead of the curve to make money. We live in a capitalist world. But I think that putting code live, we're going to see more code go live than we've ever seen before in our lifetime. And I think that will create the disaster. I think the lack of care, the lack of caution, the lack of quality will lead to a disaster of some sort. I hope I'm wrong. And I hope if people listen to this podcast and think, what roles do we need in place first before we start running? What roles do we need in place to keep us safe? To keep us checking against the new ISO standard that's come out for AI, the GDPR. Who's going to keep us having the enthusiasm but keep us safe in the boundaries of ethics? I think if companies can think about those roles first before chasing the dollar or the pound, I think we'll be okay. But we all know we live in a capitalist world, and I'm not sure every company will be as ethical as, say, the Manchester airport that created that booth, where they asked the question, how is this going to impact the people on the information desk? That's what I liked about that solution. They kept humans at the heart of the solution. How is it going to impact that person on that information desk? So they looked at it through their lens as well. So they created a solution, but they also looked at it through human eyes. And my fear is we might fall foul of that and not look at things through human eyes. And we might put too much code live too quickly that creates a disaster.
Wow.
I know that's really deep.
No,
But I hope people can listen to this and go, right, I need to go back to work tomorrow and have a conversation about security, safety, what AI roles we need, where's quality in all this.
Yeah, and I know it might sound dramatic, but you know, bad things have happened in the past, and also those bad things, you think, oh, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen, but they also trumped another bad thing that happened before that was that there was the worst thing, right? So yeah, it's definitely something to take into consideration if you're moving forward with AI. Because another and the invert of that, actually, you mentioned these roles that are going to be coming live. You think off this AI movement. What do you think? Whose roles do you think are at danger or at risk, if you had to guess?
I don't think it's a specific craft.
Okay.
I do think, however, the people, as I've said before, that don't embrace this new way of working, this new tool, I think they're at risk.
Right.
So I think those people that don't embrace it will be replaced by those people that can use the tool. I do think there's crafts outside of tech, and I could be wrong. You know, in 10 years' time, we could say, right, engineers reduced by 10%. There could be a reduction in numbers, but the word replace feels a bit extreme. I do think AI will have a massive impact in things like solicitors, lawyers, anything that requires mining data in order to surface a bit of information to, you know the way you've seen all the American films when lawyers will get the big folders out and they've got to go through all the court cases to find that one sentence that they can then take to court to get their defendant off. AI.
Yeah.
And I think in those industries, marketing as well, I think you're going to see a huge swing. In tech, maybe I'm being a little bit arrogant saying we won't be impacted. We will 100% be impacted. My concern in tech is when a developer writes code, they understand the code. They have the deep knowledge of the code they've written because they've written it with their own hands. If you're using AI to generate code, you lose that tacit knowledge, you lose that depth of knowledge, and it becomes superficial, it becomes high level. And my fear is engineers, QEs will almost become high level knowledge experts on the code and not deep in the code. So when we do get problems, they find it really hard to fix because they didn't write the code with their bare hands. They trusted a tool to write it for them, and they just checked it and that looks all right, and they go forth. So I do think there's that thing that I hope all engineers and QEs can take from this is, you know, take the outputs, but you've got to understand what made the code, the path, the logic, because you will need that deep knowledge to go back and fix any issues. AI generated code is not bug-free code, not in my experience. So I think who's at risk? Those people that don't embrace. I think there's other crafts outside of tech that could be impacted. I'd love to have one of these in 5 years' time, and we can say, you know, we've got some data that shows there was a huge explosion in QEs and developers reduced. I mean, that would be bizarre, but it's not unrealistic. 5 years ago, I remember I was leading an engineering team, and I said to one of the devs, "You've got a job for life." And I was like, how mad is that? Because I was thinking years ago, my mum used to say teachers have a job for life, and that's no longer the case. And I'll never forget this developer went, "Do you think so?" I went, "Yeah, I think, we'll always need coders." Yeah. And now I'm thinking, wow, we do, but maybe not as many. I don't know. The next 5 years is fascinating. We're going into the unknown.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the best skills you can have. I mean, people talk about grit and perseverance, obviously very, very important. But I think that adaptability to change in this day and age, There's Nassim Taleb who wrote, oh God, I can't remember the name of his book now. Was it Black Swan? Oh, anyway, and he wrote some great books, but he wrote a book called Anti-Fragile, and
Right.
and I think that is the thing that you should be is anti-fragile. You know, you almost thrive in change, and I think that in this day and age, if AI has taught us nothing, is that.
Wow. So can we talk about Madonna?
Please.
So Madonna, the
Always.
pop star. Yeah, right. So probably not the Madonna of today, but I remember Madonna bursting onto the scene in 1983. In fact, her first live performance in the UK was in this city at a nightclub called the Hacienda. Madonna had this wonderful gift of disappearing for a couple of months and coming out and reinventing herself to be relevant. So in 1990, I remember she came out and she went into sort of dance and trance a little bit. I think a song called Frozen is a great example of that. And she'd regularly take herself off the music scene, go away, come back completely reinvented with a new kind of music, a new beat, a new director, a producer, and a new look. She kept reinventing herself, and I think that ties into your adaptability. I think I always need to keep reinventing myself, and I want to do it. I don't want to be told to do it. So I want to be on the front foot when it comes to reinventing myself. I don't want to sit in front of a CTO and they go, you're no longer relevant because you didn't reinvent yourself. Because it's not a nice conversation, it only ends one way.
Sure.
So if anybody can take anything from this, it's own your self-development and keep reinventing yourself to stay relevant.
Good question, and kind of going off the AI topic a little bit. If you as a manager, you've been a leader for however long, right, a long time. If you have a direct report who you feel isn't taking ownership of their own self-development, but you know that if he did, it would really be a game changer for them, how do you get them there? How do you lead the horse to water?
It's a real tough one. I think getting to understand people and what's important to them is really important, irrespective of the challenge. So as a leader, getting to know the people you're privileged to lead unlocks so much. And I've had these conversations around self-development so many times, so I try and point out the impact of not doing your self-development. But there's something else you can try through getting to know them, unearth what they're passionate about. And then once you understand what someone is passionate about, you can try and leave breadcrumbs that lead them to the point where you want them to own something or do something. But you're absolutely right, you can't physically get somebody and physically push them to a pond or a watering hole. But you can certainly leave breadcrumbs, you can give encouragement, you can understand their dreams and ambitions. We spoke about dreams and ambitions at the very beginning. I'll give you some examples. At Cavu, as soon as I joined, one tester said, I want to be a developer. That's my dream and ambition. He's now a developer. Another quality engineer said, I want to be an engineering manager. That's my dream and ambition. He's now an engineering manager. I've got other QEs coming to me now saying my dream and ambitions are this or that or that. And sometimes it might not be in tech. But I am hell-bent on supporting them get some way towards that, achieving the dream and ambition, which you mentioned at the very beginning, which did trigger me. I thought, I wonder if I'll get a chance to talk about this. So to answer your question, understand your people. Where are their passions? What are their dreams? What are their ambitions? And see if you can tie that into encouraging them to self-develop. I'm pretty blunt. I point out the impacts. If you don't, this could happen. In this city, in 2011, there was a huge testing conference. It was called Eurostar. And someone comes out, he was unknown to me at the time, he's called James Whittaker. And he came out in front of 800 software testers. And there was this pause, and he just looked around and he went, testing is dead. Right. And there was this, you could hear everyone taking a breath. And I was like, oh, this is going to be brilliant. But everyone else was like, ooh, people were like on Twitter and all sorts, and it just exploded. It went viral. Now, his message in that 45-minute best talk I've ever seen was testing isn't dead. But if you don't stay relevant, and if you don't own your self-development, if you don't align to the new trends, latest trends, there's a chance you will become irrelevant, and then there could be a conversation in your company. I think that's a great message. And that's the message I relay to those people that are hard to get to the watering hole is, if you don't stay relevant, it might be tough in the future for you to have a role in this craft. Sometimes you've got to be really honest with people to shape them to their foundations.
Yeah, I mean, the truth, it sets you free, but first it's got to piss you off a little bit, right? And it only really does annoy you a little bit if it's true.
Yeah.
We've all had those conversations. We're talking about perseverance and talking about self-development. I feel like a lot of self-development comes from mistakes. You've been in this game for 27 years.
Poor. Yeah.
What would you say are your biggest mistakes you've made and lessons learned from those mistakes?
God, there's so many. Because, let's be really open with each other. The word fail used to be a dirty word, but I don't think it is anymore.
No.
And my first ever public talk, 12 years ago, was fail is not a dirty word. And you can watch it on YouTube. It's absolutely shocking. My presentation skills, everything is bad. But it was my first ever public talk, and it was in this city. So if I was to highlight a couple, can I highlight a couple?
Yeah,
Because I think there's different lessons from these. In fact, I could talk for hours about my failures. I think a funny one to start with is, I think it was 2003, I'm testing the world's first touchscreen smartphone, and I was testing something called MMS. Do you remember picture messaging where you...
Multimedia messaging?
Oh, yeah. But it was brand new back then. So I remember somebody sending me a video of Kylie Minogue advertising her Agent Provocateur underwear range. And it was on an advert that was banned in all cinemas, never made TV. It was basically Kylie Minogue on a rodeo horse in the underwear that she was selling, the Kylie Minogue range. Someone sent me that on email, and I opened it. And apart from going past the obvious thoughts, I went, this will make great test data. I'm going to put this on my phone. Because it was 400 kilobytes, and you're probably thinking, why is that relevant? Well, the limit for an MMS was 200 kilobytes. So in my mind, I'm going, it's bigger than what the message should support. So it's a valid test. So I put the video on my phone, and I do create MMS, and I do insert, and I went, oh, it's inserted. Bug number 1. But I thought, I won't raise that bug just yet. I'll just see how far I can go with this. So then I got another phone out, and I went, send to this phone here. And I looked at it, and it disappeared, as in it sent. And I was like, oh, that shouldn't have happened. There should be code in there that stops it being sent. So I'm thinking, oh. And then literally 30 minutes later, the head of engineering comes out his office. Now, let me paint a picture. He's 6'4". He's skinny. He's got this mad professor hair. And he's going, someone in this room has brought down the Orange network. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if that was... Yeah, I think it was me, yeah. And no word of lie, he stops at my desk and he looks at me and he goes, was it you? And I was like, yeah. And I spent the next half hour in his office talking about why I used a Kylie Minogue video in an MMS client to bring down the Orange network. Because we tested everything on live networks, and we shouldn't have done.
Right.
We were very naughty. But what had happened was Orange didn't isolate their servers. They were almost like in a domino effect.
Right.
Dandelion effect. So every server was sort of interlinked. So when I brought down the MMS server, it brought down everything. So I suppose that was a mistake.
That was brilliant.
Any lessons learned? I love that mistake. And I'd do it again tomorrow. I really would. But I think some more sort of testing ones which have some validity are, I became a power freak. So in 2006, I thought I'll be judged on how big my test team is. Almost like you're judged by the size of your car.
Yeah.
It's like that. If I can get my test team to be massive, I'll be more respected in Sony Ericsson. So I built up a team of around 25 testers to test this piece of functionality. And then I sat there one day and I thought, I've built a cottage industry. Although I've got all these 25 testers, which is bigger than any other test team, I'm not actually doing the best for the company. And I'm certainly not doing the best for our customer, our end customer. So what I decided to do was break up that team completely and embed people with the knowledge of this piece of code we were testing, embed them in all the other teams, so that every team could get the knowledge as to how this bit of software works. But I kept a small core team of around 6. And the lesson there for me was people aren't judged on the size of your teams. They're judged on your collaborativeness, how you put your customer first, your outputs, your attitude. There's a number of things that I think people are judged on, but one of them that is not is the size of your bloody test team or engineering team. That is not how you're judged, or I hope people are not judged on the size of their teams.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's such a great lesson. It really is. There's so much of that out there, and obviously results in a lot of the time just redundancies, right? People just get made, whatever. There's a really good. I listened to a podcast the other day. I've been very guilty myself of being a bit of a perfectionist and being a bit, what's the word? A bit soft probably when it comes to failure. Like if I fail, I get really sulky. I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe that happened. I'll make excuses and try to get better at that. Well, it's a great podcast that really liberated it for me, which was I can't remember who it was actually, but the person we're speaking to was Adam Grant, who wrote a couple of books, but one of his concepts is he loves failure, and he will actually set himself a goal once a year to fail monumentally, which is it's a great way to look at it, because then if you fail, well, obviously you've succeeded, because that was the whole point of it anyway. But if you don't fail, you have to keep going and pushing yourself to the limit of what is possible, and along the way you will find new milestones that you hit and new levels of capacity that you can reach. I just think that was a really interesting way to look at it. It's like again that whole invert, always invert. I think that's a really nice way to look at failure. If you target yourself on having to fail, and if you're not really doing much, right?
Well, you're not learning if you're not failing.
No, you're living a toothless life, really, if you're not failing.
I don't know anyone that does something right the first time. It's especially coding. So Dyson, the bloke who Dyson vacuums.
Yeah, Jimmy Dyson.
That's it. Yeah, I think he's one of the richest men in Britain now.
Wow.
So when he created that first Dyson vacuum, I think, and I'd have to go away and check the figures, I think it took him over 5,000 attempts to get that vacuum right. Huh. Now, talk about resilience, and Robert the Bruce in that cave in Scotland just failing 3 times. I mean, it pales it into insignificance. Over 5,000 attempts to build that Dyson vacuum.
Wow.
That shows real grit, belief in yourself, determination. Absolutely incredible.
Wow, yeah, I just love that.
It's on a different scale, isn't it?
Oh, it's mint. It's so mint.
Yeah.
Cool. We've covered AI. We've covered your journey, your mistakes. What else is going on with you? Anything that's...
I'm at a company called Cavu at the moment. I'm head of quality engineering, and I'm loving life at Cavu. I think I'm wise enough been around the block enough times now to understand that companies love me and I love companies, but sometimes that love stops. So there's been companies in the past where that love, I've either stopped loving them or they've stopped loving me, and there's a parting of the ways. But at the moment, touch wood, without knocking the microphone, I'm loving life at Cavu. Why? Because I'm trusted, I'm empowered, there's a lot of change to go after, there's exciting things we're working on, I've got a great team, I work with some great people. I'm in the senior leadership team, so I feel like I'm adding value, and I just love getting out of bed every day to go to work for Cavu. So I'm quite lucky. And we spoke about my 27 years and how this craft has been brilliant for me. I just don't know where this ends, because I've probably got 14 years till I retire, and if I can have as good 14 years as the 27 years I've had, boy, I'm in for an amazing 14 years until I hang up my football boots or my tech boots and call it a day. So for me, I'm focused on Cavu, the people at Cavu, always focus on my family. My daughter passed her driving test yesterday, so a massive moment in the Rathbone household. My son is doing an apprenticeship at AJ Bell just down the road here in Manchester. So for me, it's focusing on family, my wife, my kids, focusing on my team, and just getting out of bed and going, today's going to be a great day.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, last question. I promise I'll let you go.
Okay.
Because I know you're busy. But if you had one piece of advice for someone out there, maybe a younger Leigh Rathbone, what would you say to them?
Oh, okay. So I know exactly what I'd say to a younger Leigh Rathbone, which is thank you. Thank you for getting me to this point. Right, so I wouldn't say change this, change that, because then you're changing the timeline. I don't want to change my timeline. I would actually say thank you. Thank you for just trusting yourself, failing, bounce back ability, dusting yourself down, believing in yourself. It'd be a huge thank you. But if I was to give advice to anybody that's sort of 18, 20 and maybe starting the tech journey, I'd say learn, and own your self-development.
Love that. Great ending. Leigh, thank you so much for coming on. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
And excited to see what happens at Cavu and your team in the next 6 to 12 months.
Lovely. Thank you for the invite.
And that's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Anything we talked about will be linked in the show notes, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And we'll catch you on the next one.